Chapter 1. What is research? Objectives. Friends, this paper deals with research methodology, and we are going to begin with basics of research. After studying this chapter, you will be able to understand the meaning of research, essential qualities of a good researcher, key terms associated with research, and how to choose relevant research topic. Introduction. Friends, this chapter will introduce you to the basic elements of research, like understanding the meaning and definition of research. It will provide you information about the key terms associated with research. Along with this, it will also elaborate the essential qualities of a good researcher. This chapter will also guide you about various research areas and how to choose a relevant research topic. Definition of research. Research is an organized and systematic way of finding answers to questions. Systematic because there is a definite set of procedures and steps which you will follow. There are certain things in the research process which are always done in order to get the most accurate results. Organized in that there is a structure or method in going about doing research. It is a planned procedure, not a spontaneous one. It is focused and limited to a specific scope. Finding answers is the end of all research. Whether it is the answer to a hypothesis or even a simple question, research is successful when we find answers. Sometimes the answer is no, but it is still an answer. Questions are central to research. If there is no question, then the answer is of no use. Research is focused on relevant, useful, and important questions. Without a question, research has no focus, drive, or purpose. Systematic investigative process employed to increase or revise current knowledge by discovering new facts. It is divided into two general categories. Basic research is inquiry aimed at increasing scientific knowledge, and second, applied research is effort aimed at using basic research for solving problems or developing new processes, products, or techniques. Research comprises creative work undertaken on a systematic basis in order to increase the stock of knowledge, including knowledge of humans, culture, and society, and the use of this stock of knowledge to devise new applications. It is used to establish or confirm facts, reaffirm the results of previous work, solve new or existing problems, support theorems, or develop new theories. A research project may also be an expansion on past work in the field. To test the validity of instruments, procedures, or experiments, research may replicate elements of prior projects or the projects as a whole. The primary purposes of basic research, as opposed to applied research, are documentation, discovery, interpretation, or the research and development (R&D) of methods and systems for the advancement of human knowledge. Approaches to research depend on epistemologies, which vary considerably both within and between humanities and sciences. There are several forms of research: scientific, humanities, artistic, economic, social, business, marketing, practitioner research, etc. Research has been defined in a number of different ways. A broad definition of research is given by Martin Shuttleworth. In the broadest sense of the word, the definition of research includes any gathering of data, information, and facts for the advancement of knowledge. Another definition of research is given by Criswell, who states that research is a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or issue. It consists of 3 steps: pose a question, collect data to answer the question, and present an answer to the question. The Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary defines research in more detail as a studious inquiry or examination, especially investigation or experimentation aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of accepted theories or laws in the light of new facts, or practical application of such new or revised theories or laws. Steps in conducting research. Research is often conducted using the hourglass model structure of research. The hourglass model starts with a broad spectrum for research, focusing in on the required information through the method of the project, like the neck of the hourglass, then expands the research in the form of discussion and results. The major steps in conducting research are identification of research problem, literature review, specifying the purpose of research, determine specific research questions, specification of a conceptual framework, usually a set of hypotheses, choice of a methodology for data collection, analyzing and interpreting the data, reporting and evaluating research, communicating the research findings, and possibly recommendations. The steps generally represent the overall process. However, they should be viewed as an ever-changing, iterative process rather than a fixed set of steps. Most research begins with a general statement of the problem, or rather, the purpose for engaging in the study. The literature review identifies flaws or holes in previous research which provides justification for the study. Often a literature review is conducted in a given subject area before a research question is identified. A gap in the current literature, as identified by a researcher, then engenders a research question. The research question may be parallel to the hypothesis. The hypothesis is the supposition to be tested. The researchers collects data to test the hypothesis. The researcher then analyzes and interprets the data via a variety of statistical methods, engaging in what is known as empirical research. The results of the data analysis in confirming or failing to reject the null hypothesis are then reported and evaluated. At the end, the researcher may discuss avenue for further research. However, some researchers advocate for the flip approach, starting with articulating findings and discussion of them, moving up to identification research problem that emerging in the findings and literature review introducing the findings. The flip approach is justified by the transactional nature of the research endeavor, where research inquiry, research questions, research method, relevant research literature, and so on are not fully known until the findings fully emerged and interpreted. Rudolf Ramuel says, no researcher should accept any one or two tests as definitive. It is only when a range of tests are consistent over many kinds of data, researchers, and methods can one have confidence in the results. Qualities of a good researcher. A good researcher needs to have some specific core competencies like analytical mind, people person, ability to stay calm, intelligence, curiosity, quick thinker, commitment, excellent written and verbal communication skills, sympathetic, systematic, and thirst for new information, keen sense of things around him, reflects or thinks about the things he encounters, apply a systematic approach in assessing situations. Now, let's recall them in detail. Qualities of a good researcher. First good quality is an analytical mind. A researcher must have an analytical mind. For example, as a market researcher, you are constantly analyzing a variety of factors. Why does the client ultimately want to do this research? What is the appropriate methodology? When should this research take place? What are the appropriate questions to ask and how? Why did the respondent say that? What are the findings telling us? Why are they telling us that? How do I best communicate the findings, etc.? On a daily basis, researchers must be able to take a step back and analyze the situation presented to them. Second, a people person. A researcher needs to be social. This is important for clients, buyers of research would rather work with professional and friendly consultants, also for respondents, to get the best out of interview or focus group participants. Third, the ability to stay calm. It can be really stressful as a researcher sometimes, especially when you have pressing deadlines or are experiencing problems with a data set. For example, when these situations occur, you just have to keep focused and think logically. There will always be an end point, even if it doesn't feel like it. Fourth good quality is intelligence. Research requires critical analysis, but most of all, good common sense. A researcher essentially needs to be intelligent. Intelligence to express ideas is a quality that appears to reside in gifted individuals. But if you recognize your weakness in this realm, why not seek someone who can? After all, ideas are more important, but of course better if you present them in a way that others understand well what you want to say. Fifth is curiosity. You may have the necessary intelligence, but if you are not curious enough, then you won't be passionate about developing deeper to unearth more insight. Sixth, quick thinker. Things don't always go to plan, so you need to be able to think fast. Seventh, commitment. It's a tough job. The hours can be long, the deadlines short. Eighth, excellent written and verbal communication skills. So different audiences can clearly understand the findings of the research and what it means for them. A researcher must have excellent written communications and Be fluent in the language of business. Sympathetic. Having a sympathetic ear when listening to some respondents' moans and groans is always a good skill to have. Systematic. Check, check, and check again. It sounds simple, but building in a proper amount of time for checking your work always pays dividends. This can be applied to all parts of the research process. Attention to detail. The researcher must have the ability to ensure that data is accurately presented and reported. There are innate qualities that researchers must possess to succeed in this challenging task that requires a lot of imagination and perseverance. 11. Thirst for new information. A good researcher shows an open mind about things. He does not just take things by themselves, but explores new grounds. He adopts the philosophy of thinking beyond the box, leaving out the conventional for something innovative. A good researcher trends the unknown frontier. Pieces of evidence of this thirst for new information manifest in people who don't stop learning. Those persons who maintain an open mind for new possibilities to happen, even when everything appears to have been discovered or studied or options exhausted. 200 years ago, has anyone ever thought that man could go to the moon or explore the depth of the sea or tap on the keys of the cell phone to communicate with another person so far away? 12th, a keen sense of things around him. Keenness is a quality developed through an observant attitude. A good researcher sees something more out of a common occurrence around him, and he sees this quickly. He can see a wiggling worm inside a flower, or the beautiful color combinations of a wild plant, or simply notices the small fly in the burger. 13. Reflects or thinks about the things he encounters. Researchers who pause and reflect on the knowledge that they gained either formally in school or through their experience gain insights. Insights are creative thoughts that make one nod his head and say, "Aha, this is something I have been looking for." An original idea was born. 14. Applies systematic approach in assessing situations. Research requires systematic and objective thinking to arrive at something. Logical reasoning, therefore, is applied by a good researcher. He can analyze things, meaning he can break down a complex situation into a manageable bits that he can focus his attention into. Do you have these qualities? If not, then it's time for you to harness the hidden talents in you through training and continuous learning. Key terms in research: investigation, exploration, hypothesis, data methods and techniques, results and findings, variables. Investigation. What is a research investigation? An investigation is an attempt to find in a specific way, scientific way, the answer to an original question. The scientific way may involve careful recording or organized observations, such as watching the behavior of wild birds or the movement of planets. It may use an experimental procedure that involves designing an experiment, controlling variables, interpreting your data, and making a conclusion. Investigations always look for reliable results that can be used to explain or predict events. A research investigation involves choosing and defining a topic. Pick a topic that interests you. Start asking questions about your topic. Why? What if? How? It would be a good idea to do some reading about your selected topic. Libraries and the internet are a very useful resource. You could also discuss ideas with others familiar with your topic. Forming a hypothesis. This is an educated guess as to what you think will happen in a certain set of circumstances or conditions. Investigating your hypothesis. To do this properly, you will need to design and carry out experiments in a safe manner, carefully recording the results of the experiments. A survey, if it is used to collect data as part of an investigation, is regarded by STS as an experiment. Analyzing results. What do your results mean? Working logically through your results so as to support or disprove your hypothesis. Writing a report to tell others what you did and what you found based on experiments you carried out. The experimental report is not a research assignment. Exploration. Investigation into a problem or situation which provides insights to the researcher. The research is meant to provide details where a small amount of information exists. It may use a variety of methods such as trial studies, interviews, group discussions, experiments, or other tactics for the purpose of gaining information. This is known as exploration in research. Hypothesis. A hypothesis is a specific, testable prediction. It describes in concrete terms what you expect will happen in a certain circumstance. The purpose of a hypothesis. A hypothesis is used in an experiment to define the relationship between two variables. The purpose of a hypothesis is to find the answer to a question. A formalized hypothesis will force us to think about what results we should look for in an experiment. The first variable is called the independent variable. This is the part of the experiment that can be changed and tested. The independent variable happens first and can be considered the cause of any changes in the outcome. The outcome is called the dependent variable. The independent variable in our previous example is not studying for a test. The dependent variable that you are using to measure outcome is your test score. A hypothesis should always explain what you expect to happen. Be clear and understandable. Be testable. Be measurable. And contain an independent and dependent variable. How to develop a hypothesis. Another important aspect of a hypothesis is that it should be based on research. Remember that the purpose of a hypothesis is to find the answer to a question. The first thing you should do if you want to answer a question is to find as much information on the topic as you can. Before you come up with a specific hypothesis, spend some time doing research. Then start thinking of questions you still have. After thoroughly researching your questions, you should have an educated guess about how things work. This guess about the answer to your question is where your hypothesis comes from. How to write a hypothesis. Let's learn how to properly write a hypothesis using the previous example of tomorrow's test. Examine the differences in the following hypothesis. Not studying may cause a lower grade on my test. This statement is not clear enough to be useful. Your hypothesis should be as specific as possible. If the hypothesis is vague, it is unclear how to find the answer to your question. If I don't study, then I will make a low grade on the test. This statement makes a common mistake. You have written a simple cause and effect prediction that is based on an unstated assumption. You are assuming that not studying lowers test performance. A hypothesis is clearer if you state a proposed relationship before making the prediction. If not studying lowers test performance and I don't study, then I will get a lower grade on the test. A research hypothesis is the statement created by researchers when they speculate upon the outcome of a research or experiment. Data. Meaning of data. Data can be defined as a collection of facts, figures, or any other related material, which has the ability to serve as the information for the basic study and the analysis. It must be kept in mind that data can be either old in nature or it may be the current one. For getting answers to any of the queries that are made, data related to the questions or the queries is very much needed. Data acts as the backbone for the analysis. So it can be said that no question can be answered without data. Analyzation of the data often leads to some of the inference, which are very commonly called as the information. The inference, which is based on the guess, work, or on the opinions, can never ever make a place in the research, but the factors which play a critical role in the research generally include accuracy, suitability, reliability, etc. What is data collection and measurement? After the selection of proper research design, a research problem is selected followed by a finalized plan of action. After all these steps comes the stage involving the collection of the data. This data is required during the various phases of study. So now we will study about the details of the sources of the data collection, importance of the data collection, and also about the various methods that can be used for performing this purpose of the data collection. Sources of data. The basic data has a direct effect on the answers to the various questions, and hence the source of the data is very much important as it provides the necessary information. The various sources of the data can be summarized as follows. Primary sources. These types of the sources refer to the first-hand sources or the original sources at the hands of a researcher, which is not collected in the past. Collection of the primary data can be done with the help of the principal sources of the observation and also the surveys. Primary data in very simple and general language can be defined as the first-hand information relating to any type of the research that has been gathered or collected by the researcher or by any of his assistant or an agent. This type of the data helps in the original investigations and observations, which automatically further leads to the achievement of the various useful and meaningful results. A very important point to be kept in mind about these types of results obtained, which are based on the primary data, are bound to be empirical in nature and also play a very critical and defining role in the research methodology. if the primary data that has been collected and compiled is not biased in the nature, acts as a tool of great utility value, as then this type of the data becomes very much reliable, accurate and dependable in nature, that ultimately helps a great deal in carrying out the various specified investigations. Once this primary data is used, the original features or the characteristics of these data diminish, resulting in the formation of the secondary data. Hence, it can be said that the data which acts as primary data at one point of time is bound to become secondary data at some stage or time in the future. Methods of the collection of the primary data can be categorized as 1. Observation. In general terms, observation can be defined as the process involving the collection of the data by either viewing or listening or both. The best method in this category is to directly and personally observe something to get meaningful data. This method is also called as the direct personal observation. In this type of the observation, the situation is observed by the researcher in order to collect data relevant to the research. If the observation is without any bias, the data that is collected with the help of this type of method acts as the most reliable information. Observation is also a very cheap method and then also is very effective. In its nature of working, this method is a very old one data collected in the past about the human race, the environment, etc. Use this method only. But a major drawback of this type of method is that with the help of observation, one is not able to quantify the data and also one cannot reach to some concrete solutions on the basis of the data collected by this method. So it can be said that observation method should generally be used for carrying out hypothesis testing. Questionnaire and schedule. With the help of this type of method, data is collected by getting questionnaires completed by the various respondents. This method of questionnaire and schedule is generally employed in order to collect the primary data in a very systematic manner. A questionnaire can be defined as a schedule having a number of coherent questions related to the topic which is being studied. A questionnaire acts as a formulated series of the questions and helps in the collection of the information directly by the investigator himself. A schedule can be defined as the collection of the details in a tabulated form and can be sometimes identical to the questionnaire. Types of questionnaire. Structured questionnaire. This is the first type we are going to study. It consists of definite, concrete and preordinate questions. Has some additional questions as well, limited to those necessary for the classification of the inadequate answers. Is segmented in nature, provides information under given titles and the subtitles, helps in getting accurate response and apt information, saves time and also the energy. Second, non-structured questionnaire is very simple in nature, is non-segmented, has no subdivisions, can be used for very simple types of studies. Third, codified questionnaire. Expected answers are given in the code numbers. Very easy for carrying out the processing. Very suitable and also very convenient for the informant. 4. Uncodified questionnaire. Very simple in nature, consists of no codification, Codification may be sometimes made at the time of complication, but only if it is necessary. C. Experimentation forms a very commonly used and very popular ingredient of the research process, being used in the physical sciences for a long time. An experiment is the process of studying the various aspects of the relationships between the independent and the dependent variables in a controlled situation. It acts as a test or a trial method in order to test a hypothesis in a laboratory. Stimulation. Stimulation can be defined as the technique used for performing the various sampling experiments on the model of the systems. According to Abelson, stimulation is the exercise of a flexible limitation of processes and outcomes for the purpose of clearing or explaining the underlying mechanisms involved. Stimulation is a form of observational method acting as the theoretical model of the elements, relations, and the processes. This method is very widely used in the war strategies and the tact business problems, etc. It is also used in the various economical problems, political problems, and behavioral problems, and also in the social problems. Next, interview method. This method acts as a very important and a critical way to collect data involving a very planned and a very systematic conversation that takes place between the interviewer, investigator, and the respondent. By this, one is able to get very suitable information related to a specific research problem. By this method of data collection, one can get a very suitable range of data having both demographic as well as the social characteristics or any one of them. In today's world, most people like to talk rather than to write, so this method is very much preferred compared to other methods of the data collection. By this method, one can get a very deep and in-depth view of the problem. Hence, helps in probing into the problem efficiently. Projective techniques. The various direct methods are generally based on some assumptions. For example, the direct methods like the personal interview, telephone interview, etc. presuppose about a person that he is willing to provide some important information about his own behavior, beliefs, feelings, etc. But this is not the case in all the aspects. There may be some persons who may not give any type of information about themselves or may not give their opinion in a true sense. In such cases, these techniques play a very vital role as these are not dependent on the subject's self-insight. Second, secondary sources. Data can be referred to be secondary in nature if the information provided by the data is not related to the purpose of the research project work, that is, secondary data. Secondary data accounts to the information for the various other purposes and not the purpose involved in the given research work. Secondary data is readily available and the researcher himself has no control over the shape of the data as it is given shape by the others. This type of data is based on the second-hand information, that is the data that has been collected, compiled and presented in the past by some other company or group and is now being used in the various investigator procedures. This type of data is referred to as the secondary data. Methods of the collection of the secondary data can be categorized as internal. Internal data involves data that a company is already having. This type of data is collected by the company in routine. This data is used by the company itself. Data collected by such method is always in tune and regard with the research operations purpose. B. External data. External data involves data collected by the individuals. Data collected acts as a very useful and a meaningful tool for the researcher in carrying out the various research operations. Further, are two types: personal sources and the public sources. Personal sources. These type of sources for the collection of the secondary data generally involve autobiographies, diaries, letters, memories, memoirs. Then public sources. These are further of two types: unpublished public sources and published public sources. Unpublished. Due to various reasons, sometimes the data is not at all published, and some examples of such sources can be reports of inquiry commissions, report of special inquiry, etc. Published sources. Such sources include following: books, journals, newspapers, reports of the government departments, reports of the autonomous institutes. Thus, data collection is one of the most important stage in conducting a research. You can have the best research design in the world, but if you cannot collect the required data, you will not be able to complete your project. Data collection is a very demanding job which needs through planning, hard work, patience, perseverance, and more to be able to complete the task successfully. A research method is a systematic plan for doing research. Let's take a look at the four most common research methods. Definition: a research method is a systematic plan for conducting research. Sociologists draw a variety of both qualitative and quantitative research methods, including the experiments, surveys, research, participant observations, and secondary data. Quantitative methods aim to classify features, content them, count them, and create statistical methods or models to test hypotheses and explain observations. Qualitative methods aim for a complete detailed description of observations, including the context of events and circumstances. Approaches and techniques. Four commonly used methods of sociological investigation includes the experiment, surveys, participant observation, and the use of existing secondary data. The experiment. An experiment is a research method for investigating cause and effect under highly controlled conditions. When conducting an experiment, researchers will test a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement of how two or more variables are related. For example, let's say we wanted to examine whether studying affects a person's GPA. Our hypothesis might be the more a person studies, the higher a person's GPA will be. In this example, studying would be the independent variable, the cause, while a person's GPA would be the dependent variable, the effect. If we wanted to test this hypothesis, we would randomly assign subjects into two groups. The experimental group is a group of individuals that are exposed to the independent variable. The control group, on the other hand, is not exposed to the independent variable. We would require that the control group doesn't study at all, but that experimental group has to study at least 10 hours a week. After one semester, we could then determine which group has the higher GPA. If the experimental group has a statistically higher GPA, we can assume our hypothesis is correct. It is important to note that sometimes a change in the dependent variable could be the result of something entirely different than that being studied. Maybe, for example, those chosen for the experimental group were simply more intelligent than those in the control group. When two variables change together but neither one causes the other, we call this a spurious correlation. Survey research. A survey is a research method in which subjects, respond to a series of statements or questions in a questionnaire or an interview. Surveys target some population, which are the people who are the focus of research. Because populations are usually quite large, the researcher will target a sample which is a part of a population that represents the whole. Once our sample is selected, we need a plan for asking questions and recording answers. The most common types of surveys are questionnaires and interviews. A questionnaire is a series of written statements or questions. With an interview, the researcher personally asks subjects series of questions and gives participants the freedom to respond as they wish. Both questionnaires and interviews can include open-ended questions, allowing the subjects to respond freely, or close-ended questions, including a selection of fixed responses. Participant observation. The most widely used strategy for collecting qualitative data is participant observation. Participant observation is a research method in which investigators systematically observe people while joining them in their routine activities. Field work makes most participant observation exploratory and descriptive and has very few hard and fast rules. Unlike other research methods, participant observation can be a lengthy process. In fact, it may require that the researcher stay in the field for weeks or even months. Results and findings. A strategy for writing up research results. Get organized, lists, outlines, note cards, etc. Before starting to write the paper, take the time to think about and develop a list of points to be made in the paper. As you progress, use whichever strategy works for you to begin to order and to organize those points and ideas into sections. Balanced review of the primary research literature. Do an in-depth balanced review of the primary research literature relevant to your study questions prior to designing and carrying out the experiments. This review will help you learn what is known about the topic you are investigating and may let you avoid unnecessarily repeating work done by others. This literature will form the basis of your introduction and discussion. Write the introduction. Once your hypothesis has been refined for testing, you will draft the introduction to your paper. Design and conduct the experiment. Keep careful notes on procedures used during the experiment. You should write the materials and methods section upon completion of the experiment. Analyze and interpret the results. Once the data are collected, you must analyze and interpret the results. Analysis will include data summaries, example calculating means and variances, and statistical tests to verify conclusions. Most scientists lay out their tables and figures upon completion of the data analysis. Before writing the results section, write the table and figure legends. It is good practice to note the one or two key results that each table or figure conveys and use this information as a basis for writing the results section. Sequence and number the tables and figures in the order which best enables the reader to reach your conclusions. Write the results section. Remember that the results section has both text and illustrative materials, tables and figures. Use the text component to guide the reader through your key results, that is, those results which answer the questions you investigated. Each table and figure must be referenced in the text prior portion of the results, and you must tell the reader what the key results is that each table or figure conveys. Write the discussion. Interpretation of your results include discussions how your results modify and fit in with what we previously understood about the problem. Review the literature again at this time. After completing the experiments, you will have much greater insight into the subject, and by going through some of the literature again, information that seemed trivial before or was overlooked may tie something together and therefore prove very important to your own interpretation. Be sure to cite the works that you refer to. Write the abstract and title. The abstract is always the last section written because it is a concise summary of the entire paper and should include a clear statement of your aims, a brief description of the methods, key findings, and your interpretation of the key results. The title will probably be written earlier, but is often modified once the final form of the paper clearly known. Self-revise your paper. Most authors revise their papers at least 2-3 times before giving it out for peer review. Go back over your paper now and read it carefully. Read it aloud. Does it say what you wanted it to say? Do any ideas, experiments, or interpretations need to be moved around within the text to enhance the logical flow of your arguments? Can you shorten long sentences to clarify them? Can you change passive verbs to active forms? Do the tables and figures have sufficient information to stand alone outside the context of the paper? Use your dictionary to correct spellings and your spell checker to catch typos. Peer review. Have knowledgeable colleagues critics your paper. Use their comments to revise your paper yet again. Prepare the final draft. Carefully proofread your final draft to make sure it as well done as possible. Double check that you have properly cited all your sources in the text and in the literature cited. Check the formatting one last time. Variables. Very simple. A variable is a measurable characteristic that varies. It may change from group to group, person to person, or even within one person over time. There are 6 common variable types. First, dependent variables. Dependent variables show the effect of manipulating or introducing the independent variables. For example, if the independent variable is the use or non-use of a new language teaching procedure, then the dependent variable might be students' scores on a test of the content taught using the procedure. In other words, the variation in the dependent variable depends on the variation in the independent variable. Second, independent variables. Independent variables are those that our researcher has control over. This control may involve manipulating existing variables, example, modifying existing methods of instruction, or introduction new variables, example, adopting a totally new method for some sections of a class in the research setting. Whatever the cause, whatever the case may be, the researcher expects that the independent variables will have some effect on or relationship with dependent variables. Intervening variables, third type. Intervening variables refer to abstract processes that are not directly observable but that link the independent and dependent variables. In language learning and teaching, they are usually inside the subject's heads, including various language learning processes which the researcher cannot observe. For example, if the use of a particular teaching technique is the independent variable and mastery of the objectives is the dependent variable, then the language learning processes used by the subjects are the intervening variables. Moderator variables. Moderator variables affect the relationship between the independent and dependent variables by modifying the effect of the intervening variables. Unlike extraneous variables, moderator variables are measured and taken into consideration. Typical moderator variables in TESL and language acquisition research, when they are not the major focus of the study, include the sex, age, culture, or language proficiency of the subjects. Control variables. Language learning and teaching are very complex processes. It is not possible to consider every variable in a single study. Therefore, the variables that are not measured in a particular study must be held constant, neutralized, balanced, or eliminated so they will not have a biasing effect on the other variables. Variables that have been controlled in this way are called control variables. Last is extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are those factors in the research environment which may have an effect on the dependent variables but which are not controlled. Extraneous variables are dangerous. They may damage studies' validity, making it impossible to know whether the effects were caused by the dependent and moderator variables or some extraneous factor. If they cannot be controlled, extraneous variables must at least be taken into consideration when interpreting the results. 1.5 Research Area and Research Topic. Selecting a topic. The ability to develop a good research topic is an important skill. When deciding on a topic, there are a few things that you will need to do. Brainstorm for ideas. Choose a topic that will enable you to read and understand the literature. Ensure that the topic is manageable and that material is available. Make a list of keywords. Be flexible. Define your topic as a focused research question. Research and read more about your topic. Formulate a thesis statement. Be aware that selecting a good topic may not be easy. It must be narrow and focused enough to be interesting, yet broad enough to find adequate information. Before selecting your topic, make sure you know what your final project should look like. Use the steps below to guide you through the processes of selecting a research topic. Step 1. Brainstorm for ideas. Choose a topic that interests you. Use the following questions to help generate topic ideas. Do you have a strong opinion on a current social or political controversy? Did you read or see news story recently that has piqued your interest or made you angry or anxious? Do you have a personal issue, problem, or interest that you would like to know more about? Do you have a research paper due for a class this semester? Is there an aspect of a class that you are interested in learning more about? Be aware of overused ideas when deciding a topic. Step 2. Read general background information. Read a general encyclopedia article on the top 2 or 3 topics you are considering. Reading a broad summary enables you to get an overview of the topic and see how your idea relates to a broader, narrower, and related issues. It also provides a great source for finding words commonly used to describe the topic. Use periodical indexes to scan current magazine, journal, or newspaper articles on your topic. Use web search engines. Google and Bing are currently considered to be two of the best search engines to find websites on the topic. Step 3. Focus on your topic. Keep it manageable. A topic will be very difficult to research if it is too broad or narrow. One way to narrow a broad topic such as the environment is to limit your topic. Some common ways to limit a topic are by geographical area. Example, what environmental issues are most important in the southwestern United States? By culture. Example, how does the environment fit into the Navajo worldview? By time frame. Example, what are the most prominent environmental issues of the last 10 years? By discipline. Example, how does environmental awareness affect business practices today? By population group. Example, what are the effects of air pollution on senior citizens? Remember that a topic may be too difficult to research if it is too locally confined, recent, or broadly interdisciplinary. Popular. Locally confined means topics this specific may only be covered in these local newspapers, if at all. Example, what sources of population pollution affect the Genesee County water supply? Recent. If a topic is quite recent, books or journal articles may not be available, but newspapers or magazine articles may. Also, websites related to the topic may or may not be available. Broadly interdisciplinary. You could be overwhelmed with superficial information. Example, how can the environment contribute to the culture, politics, and society of the Western states? Popular. You will only find very popular articles about some topics, such as sports figures and high profile celebrities and musicians. Step 4. Make a list of useful keywords. Keep track of the words that are used to describe your topic. Look for words that best describe your topic. Look for them in when reading encyclopedia, articles, and background and general information. Find broader and narrower terms, synonyms, key concepts for keywords to widen your search capabilities. Make note of these words and use them later when searching databases and catalogs. Step 5. Be flexible. It is common to modify your topic during the research process. You can never be sure of what you may find. You may find too much and need to narrow your focus, or too little and need to broaden your focus. This is a normal part of the research process. When researching, you may not wish to change your topic, but you may decide that some other aspects of the topic is more interesting or manageable. Keep in mind that the assigned length of the research paper, project, bibliography, or other research assignments. Be aware of the depth of coverage needed and the due date. These important factors may help you decide how much and when you will modify your topic. Step 6. Define your topics as a focused research question. You will often begin with a word develop a more focused interest in an aspect of something related to that word, and then begin to have questions about the topic. For example, ideas. Frank Lloyd Wright or modern architecture? Research question. How has Frank Lloyd Wright influenced modern architecture? Focused research questions. What design principles used by Frank Lloyd Wright are common in contemporary homes? Step 7. Research and read more about your topic. Use the keywords you have gathered to research in the catalog, article databases, and internet search engines. Find more information to help you answer your research questions. You will need to do some research and reading before you select your final topic. Can you find enough information to answer your research question? Remember, selecting a topic is as important and complex part of the research process. Step 8. Formulate a thesis statement. Write your topic as a thesis statement. This may be the answer to your research question and or a way to clearly state the purpose of your research. Your thesis statement will usually be one or two sentences that states precisely what is to be answered, proven, or what you will inform your audiences about your topic. The development of a thesis assumes there is sufficient evidence to support the thesis statement. For example, a thesis statement could be Frank Lloyd Wright's design participle principles, including his use of ornamental detail and his sense of space and texture, opened a new era of American architecture. His work has influenced contemporary residential design. The title of your paper may not be exactly the same as your research question or your thesis statement, but the title should clearly convey the focus, purpose, and meaning of your research. For example, a title could be Frank Lloyd Wright, Key Principles of Design for the Modern Home. Conclusion. This chapter enables us to know the basic elements of research, which is related to systematic investigation and study. It also defines the prerequisites of a good researcher. This chapter also studies the key terms in research: investigation, exploration, hypothesis, data, methods, and techniques, results and findings, and variables. This chapter guide about the various avenues in research and to select a relevant research topic. The next chapter will deal with how to construct research design. Summary. Research comprises creative work undertaken on a systematic basis in order to increase the stock of knowledge, including knowledge of humans, culture, and society, and the use of this stack of knowledge to devise new applications. The major steps in conducting research are identification of research problem, literature review, specifying the purpose of research, determine specific research questions, specifications of a conceptual framework, usually a set of hypotheses, choice of a methodology for data collection, analyzing and interpreting the data, reporting and evaluating research, communicating the research findings, and possibly recommendations. A good researcher needs to have some specific core competencies like an analytical mind, a people person, the ability to stay calm, intelligence, curiosity, quick thinker, commitment, excellent written and verbal communication skills, sympathetic, systematic, thirst for a new information, and a keen sense of things around him to apply a systematic approach in assessing situations. A research investigation involves choosing and defining a topic, asking questions about your topic, forming a hypothesis, investigating your hypothesis carefully, recording the results of the experiments, analyzing results, working logically through your results so as to support or disprove your hypothesis, writing a report to tell others what you did and what you found based on experiments you carried out. Try to critically examine the qualities of a good researcher and check if it applies to you. Make a list of the qualities present and absent in you which can lead you to be a good researcher.